We are at a monumental time in our history when it comes to our food. In fact, the next generation may not even know what certain foods really actually taste like. This video is very important because we need to discuss why, as home millers, you should not be using genetically modified grains. And that means that we're going to be discussing what genetically modified actually means and the difference between genetically modified and hybridization. And more importantly, a huge news update going on right now. There is a fight between the United States and Mexico when it comes to one of our very beloved grains. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, we talk all things real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. I not only teach you how to mill your own wheat, how to bake those delicious breads, but also give you news updates in regards to grains and the things that you need to be thinking about when it comes to our food. So as I stated, we are going to be discussing why you should be avoiding genetically modified food in general, but especially genetically modified grains as home millers, those of us who are milling our grains at home. But even if you don't mill your grains, this is important for you too. And we're going to be discussing the difference between GMO and hybridization, especially when it comes to wheat, because there are myths out there as far as what grains are actually genetically modified. And then we're going to be discussing the current news going on right now, the fight between the United States and Mexico when it comes to one of our very, very beloved and important grains, which is corn. Now, before we begin, do know that sources of everything that I'm stating, I will be flashing it up here on the screen, and or I will also be listing everything down in the description box below. I do encourage you to check all of these sources out so you can verify that what I'm saying to you is true, but also to get more information that I did not cover in this video. So first of all, to begin, we need to first discuss exactly what is a genetically modified organism, or GMO. You also can abbreviate it as GM crop or GM whatever. So what is the definition of this? According to the Non-GMO Project, a GMO, or genetically modified organism, is a living plant, animal, or microorganism that has been subjected to biotechnology. GMO developers use biotechnology to alter that living organism's fundamental characteristics. Biotechnology includes techniques such as using synthetic genetic sequences to change the organism's genetic material, i.e. DNA or RNA, or forcing the combination of very unrelated organisms that would not normally reproduce in nature. So to sum it up, we're basically talking about how you stick spider DNA into a grain of wheat. That hasn't happened, but we're talking where they are actually going into the genetic code and they are inserting genes from something else that does not naturally occur in that plant or product or whatever it is that they're doing. They are taking foreign genetics and inserting that into the genetic code. Are you getting red flags already? Now, to contrast that to actual hybridization, and especially in the wheat debate with the grain deniers, those who say that wheat is the evil of all evils, this is where they really get their circuits crossed, because wheat and everything pretty much is hybridized. And what hybridization means is that actually is done naturally. It's just natural breeding methods, natural breeding techniques that happen amongst people, plants, animals. It happens by nature. It is breeding wheat to wheat. Corn to corn. It is breeding a cow to a cow, a pig to a pig, and creating something, but it's still of the same kind. This happens by nature. This is the way that God designed it. And in fact, all of our grains that we have even today, even our ancient ones like einkorn, kamut, those are hybrids. They were domesticated. This is something that we have been doing for thousands of years, and it is the way that God created it, because hybridization allows plants and animals to adapt to their environment so they can survive. So while GMO is basically playing God, hybridization is not. Hybridization is God's design. It happens even without mankind's intervention. But of course, as agriculturalists, farmers, we as humans have been hybridizing things from the beginning. So if you are one of those that avoid grains because there's Franken wheat out there, which is not true, also be sure to avoid apples, bananas, and even pigs and cows and many animals because they're pretty much all hybridized. Bananas today isn't what it looked like 100 or 1,000 years ago. And even with cows, we have Angus, Brangus, all these different breeds, hybrids, but they're all the same kind. So now that we've established the difference between GMO and hybridization, now let's discuss that why, as home millers, as Christians, as human beings, should be avoiding genetically modified organisms, especially when it comes to our food, at all cost. Number one, the biggest reason is because they're playing God. This is not God's design at all. God did design for our genetics to be able to hybridize. I can take an Angus cow, I can transfer it over to Ireland and breed it with one of their native cows and get a cow. That is how God designed it. God designed that kinds be with kinds. He did not design it where we are to be messing with the genetic DNA or RNA of different species and inserting something completely foreign that God never once designed to be put there. And this is super dangerous because we don't even know what we're messing with. We only discovered DNA like 50, 60 years ago. And it's been thousands of years that humanity has been here. And we are still discovering new things about our bodies, about DNA, genetics, all of those things. So what do we not know? Who knows what we don't know? That's why we should just leave things up to the Lord here and eat food the way that He created to be food and as close to the way that He designed it as possible. Don't let anything become an addiction. Just keep it simple. Reason number two to be avoiding GMO crops is that it actually is hurting farmers. Now, this is hailed as a way to end hunger and to help farmers, but that is actually very deceptive. And here is why. First of all, genetically modified crops are patented. That means that it is now the property of a company. So think of this, companies owning seeds, companies owning life. Not cool. With those companies owning those seeds, that means that they can make the rules for those seeds. And so that means that farmers cannot save their seeds, which is absolutely absurd because that is really how we perpetuate things. That's what every farmer, homesteader, it's generally what is done for thousands of years is you grow the crop and then you save that seed so you have it to plant the next growing season. With genetically modified crops, they are not allowed to save their seeds. They have to just buy the seeds again from whatever company that it is. And then usually they also have to buy the pesticides or whatever chemicals, fertilizers, things like that, that they also have to use from that company as well. So this is really all about money for the company. Let's not, and I'm not against people making money, but it is what it is. I actually do recommend the documentary. It's old, but really good information, and that is The World According to Monsanto. If I can find it for y'all, I will link it in the description box below. And it's very eye-opening, especially with how much they have hurt the farmers in the US and also across the world, because they will accuse farmers of saving their seed. They will then bring lawsuits against them, and a lot of times the farmers cannot compete with the big, huge, massive corporations like Monsanto, now owned by Bayer. Number three is that it does contaminate our soil and plant and animal life. So especially with grains like corn, soybeans, a lot of these crops are genetically modified to produce some sort of insecticide. Like BT corn. You may have heard of BT corn because the corn is actually producing in itself an insecticide so it doesn't get eaten by bugs. So they can just douse the whole field with this insecticide and chemicals and it not kill the corn, where usually it would because it's meant to kill things. Well, in doing that, it has really been hurting our pollinators, like our bees. It hurts the soil because now these chemicals are going into the soil and there's really no taking it back. These plants, these genetically modified crops, can still cross-pollinate with non-GMO crops of the same kind. So GMO corn can pollinate with non-GMO corn, thus contaminating our non-GMO corn. And again, there is so much we don't even know because this is still kind of new. GMOs started coming out in the 1990s, and we're kind of still seeing the effects of this, and we're going to continue to see how bad this can actually get. So again, these were chemicals and things that God never designed to be put on this planet. And who knows what we have really done. Not to mention, this is food that we eat. And who knows? Which leads us to number 4 reasons why you should be avoiding this is because there are no long-term studies to date, because it hasn't been out long-term, of the effect that genetically modified crops have on humans, have on our environment, or just safety in general. The bottom line, just avoid. Avoid, which is actually very difficult because the biggest crops that are genetically modified are corn, soybeans, cotton, and canola. And corn, y'all, is in everything. Soybean oil in everything. Go to the grocery store, look at a label, and I guarantee you, you will most likely see one of those foods, especially in mayonnaise. That is always soybean oil. That is a genetically modified ingredient. Just most processed foods have some sort of genetically modified food in it. So I understand that this is very difficult to avoid, but that's why we're going to narrow it down to our grains, how you can be avoiding it when it comes to your grains. Now, before we get into the fight between the US and Mexico going on right now with this whole genetically modified stuff, do know that wheat was not on that list. There is no GMO wheat. There are other countries that have it where they're studying GMO wheat, but as of right now, there is no genetically modified wheat in the US. It's not been approved, nothing like that. So rest assured there, if you want to be doubly safe, buy organic, but there is no GMO wheat. Unfortunately, though, our corn has been genetically modified, which leads us to the battle between the US and Mexico right now. And no, it's not about immigration. It's about their bread of life, their staple crop, which is corn. So here is an overview of what's going on. The Mexican government has prohibited use of GM, genetically modified corn from masa dough to make tortillas, that's the masa harina, and other staples of the Mexican diet. The United States is trying to force Mexico to repeal its policy under a dispute resolution mechanism of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, which is the new NAFTA. Mexico is also concerned about the health impacts of residues of the herbicide glyphosate in GM corn and is phasing out use of the weed killer. Okay, so that's the overview of what is going on right now. This actually started last summer of 2023. I've kind of just now gotten wind of it and needed to report it to you guys so you know what's going on. But first, let's go back. We got to look at a little bit of history and some basic facts so you can form an opinion and know what's going on. In case you do not know your North American history, back in 1994, NAFTA, the North American Federal Trade Agreement, was passed, which is basically trade agreements between Canada, US, and Mexico. And it was heralded as a really great thing then, and then Trump came along and said, we're getting rid of NAFTA, and that's why now we have the USMCA, the United States-Mexican-Canada Agreement, which is a lot like the same thing, but that's beside the point. It's still a trade agreement between our 3 countries. Now, when NAFTA passed, this actually devastated Mexican farmers, specifically in Mexico back in the 1990s, because back then what happened was cheap US corn then flooded Mexican markets. And then on top of that, in the 90s is also when genetically modified corn was coming out as well. This caused economic devastation, especially to Mexican farmers, and illegal immigration actually skyrocketed 75%, illegal immigration from Mexico to the United States because of this economic devastation. So I know that politics can be a complicated thing, but this is just facts going on if this is what happened in this specific area. Now, in doing this, the fact that we do have these trade agreements, Mexico is actually a huge agricultural trading partner with the United States. Thank you, Mexico, because we have avocados because of this, because avocados are in Mexico. So a lot of our tomatoes, limes, avocados, they're coming from Mexico, and they're not like crazy stupid pricing because of these trade agreements. But it definitely was hurting a lot of small farmers, and it kind of still is today. Now, another point that you need to know about is that Mexico is actually the birthplace of corn. In essence, they are the Fertile Crescent of corn, where Fertile Crescent is generally where our origins begin for those of us who use a lot of wheat. Fertile Crescent. You use a lot of corn, Mexico is your Fertile Crescent, the birthplace of corn. And in fact, there are 59 original varieties of just corn that come from Mexico, but there's actually a lot more than that because they're like varieties of varieties. But there are 59 unique varieties from Mexico. That's a lot. Another thing to consider is how it's so important of a crop to Mexico because it's not just a crop. The word maize is often used interchangeably with the word corn. The term comes from the indigenous word maíz, meaning source of life. The reverence of the crop's name underscores its importance to food security, political stability, and cultural identity. So it's not just a crop. It's not just something that they grow. It is a huge part of their identity as a people and as a culture. Corn is Mexico's #1 grain. And actually there's a Spanish idiom that I'm probably about to pronounce, but I'll put it up here on the screen. Sin maíz no hay país. Sorry for those Spanish speakers. But basically it means without corn, there is no country. So we've established that corn is a huge part of not just, hey, we grow this grain, it's our #1 grain, but it's also a huge part of their identity. Think about it, y'all. Mexican food, think of all the varieties of Mexican food that deal with corn. You have, of course, our beloved tacos, corn tortillas, you have tamales, you have pozole. There are just so many dishes, and it's because it's all based on this one grain. So much of their food that goes back for thousands of years, for generations, this is their bread of life, their staff of life, and it's wrapped up in their identity. So let's bring it up today and talk numbers today. So today, 92% of corn grown in the United States is genetically modified, which is very depressing. Mexico is also, as I stated, the US largest agricultural trading partner, and Mexico is also the United States' largest importer of the genetically modified corn. In fact, between 2018 and 2020, Mexico imported about 30% of the corn that was exported from the United States. And then in 2020, Mexico's president vowed to fade out genetically modified corn completely and also to rid the country of glyphosate. And the US flipped out. They flipped out so much that Mexico's president, actually, they did soften it a little bit, where they said, fine, we will allow the GMO corn into our country, but it is only for animal feed and industrial purposes, but it's not for human consumption. And the president vowed to actually completely have it all faded out by the year 2024, which we are now in, which is why this fight's now going on. So the United States completely has wigged out, and they are now accusing Mexico of violating the USMCA trade agreement. So now it's all caught up in some legal battle. So one thing that the United States is saying is that they are banning GMO corn based on unscientific reasons, which is just not true. First of all, there have been studies to actually give caution to using genetically modified corn as well as just crops in general. But one thing that I find interesting is that Mexico has just stated, like, look, we are concerned for the health of our people, the health of our soil, and we also don't want it messing with our actual varieties of corn and messing with the biodiversity that we have, messing with their soil. They have very specific growing conditions that this can mess with. I mean, they have every right to be concerned. But Mexico has reached out to the United States and actually proposed to have a joint scientific research study on GMO corn. So they said, all right, you're saying that it's not, we're basing this on non-science stuff. So let us actually come together and have a joint effort, and let's actually study this to see if there is reason to be concerned or if there's not. And the United States has completely refused. Shocker. Because again, it goes back to 92% of the United States corn is genetically modified, and Mexico is one of their largest importers of said corn. Do the math. So there was a written report by the Commission of Environmental Cooperation, and what they were doing is looking at the effects that GMO corn could actually have on the Mexican native corn. And does it actually pose a threat, a contamination threat? And here's actually what they stated. Quote, impacts on the genetic diversity of Mexican maize could have direct repercussions on the diversity of maize and ecosystems in all of North America and the rest of the world. Mexico is one of the centers of origin for maize. To lose a variety of maize in Mexico is to lose it throughout the planet. Y'all, this is why we have got to be on top of this, because it is possible that our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren may not actually have real corn, if you can even imagine that. Imagine that if this goes through and if the US forces Mexico to accept this GMO corn, to be growing it, to do all of this, and then it starts contaminating these, the varieties that they have, the unique corn varieties, it's contaminating their soil. It is possible that this is going to completely wipe out corn as we know it. And we're only stuck with your typical yellow GMO corn. So why should we care? Especially if you don't actually live in Mexico. And that is because as grainies, you know, we should care because we care about grains. I care because I care about God's creation, the fact that it is a beautiful, beautiful thing to have the variety that He's given us in creation. And I care because right now it's corn. Make no mistake that one day, and they are trying to come after our wheat and our other grains. They've already messed with the flour when it comes to wheat. They've already made our bread less nutritious by messing with the flour and taking on all the good stuff. So there's already a war on wheat. And now there's a huge war on corn. And it is so important that as grainies, those of us who love food, who love diversity, who want to actually still know what real food tastes like, this is why we should care. And you actually can do something about this, even if you don't live in Mexico or you're not involved in politics whatsoever. How you can help out with this is, first of all, to, at your very best, try not to buy GMO food. So you can always look for the label, the Non-GMO Project label that I will have up here on the screen. Anytime that this is on a product in the store, it means it has been tested by them and it contains no genetically modified ingredients. Always read your labels as well. If it contains corn, soybean, canola oil, that's a huge red flag that it has probably been genetically modified. So you're going to need to check on that. But as far as our grains go, especially with corn, support companies, especially like Hacienda. This is not sponsored by them, but Hacienda is actually the one company that I found that so far that actually sources these heritage heirloom corn varieties from Mexico to make masa harina, your tamales, your tacos, all of those things. They're actually supporting those small farmers in the heart of Mexico that is still growing the same corn that has been grown since probably the Aztecs for generations. So buying from them, I know, supports those small farmers, which I love, and knowing that I'm getting a non-GMO corn that also tastes amazing and are the best tortillas I have ever made. So grainsofgrit.com/Hacienda to check them out. And I encourage you that you do. So they are one company that you know that is an excellent way to support this fight because you vote with your money. Companies will listen to their bottom line if their profits start going down. Or if that's not optional for you, or maybe you just want corn for other things, just buy a non-GMO corn. So as your standard, their corn is non-GMO. Just make sure that you're buying a non-genetically modified corn or whatever grain that it is that you're wanting. So this is definitely a fight and a cause that I personally am willing to support. And I'm definitely going to try and do that more and more with my dollars. And if you're wanting to actually know more about Hacienda specifically, then be sure to check out this video here where I did an unboxing. They really are the best tortillas I have ever made. Their masa harina is absolutely amazing. I do plan on doing another video soon about actually nixtamalizing your own corn, which you can do there as well. But they are an excellent company to support. And this is how that you can support this war going on. And so for those of you in Mexico, keep on with this fight. I support you because I too love a variety of corn. So as always, hopefully this was informative. Let me know your thoughts below in the comments and I'll see you next week. Bye.